So tonight, I'm really excited to introduce Christine Herbert, and really grateful that she's joining us. Christine, for those of you that are members, may be familiar with her, as she was former member of the Council of the Association of Master Herbalists and is sort of an honorary member. And I'll just quickly talk through her bio. Christine, she qualified as a herbalist in 1997, so been practicing for over 20 years. And during this time, she's been using iridology, flower essences, kinesiology, nutrition, essential oils, and is all-round holistic practitioner, specializing in digestive disorders, allergies, health issues, and obviously she's got so much knowledge on sleep. She was also one of the organisers of HerbFest UK for 7 years. She's co-edited and wrote many articles for the Herbalists. And prior to her herbal career, she was also senior biomedical scientist for nearly 20 years, working in the NHS in haematology and blood transfusion. Now she is retired, but up to lots of stuff. I've just heard she's already written another book, and she also runs a small holding in Norfolk. So she's very self-sufficient and grows many of the herbs that she's used in her practice. And today we will be talking to her all about sleep, because Christine has just written a fantastic book about sleep, covering so many different areas. If you've got any sleep issues, then this is the one to get. And I'll mention again at the end of the talk, but if you want to pre-order Christine's book, there is a discount code going for 20% off, which is SE20, and I'll share the link in the chat once we get going. But yeah, after that, I just want to say thank you so much, Christine. It's such a pleasure to have you here with us. And just to let everyone know, I know you're all on mute. If you do have any questions, you can ask them in the chat, and then perhaps we can have some time at the end as well to open it up if anyone sort of feels like speaking as well. So Christine, after that introduction, I just wanted to start just by asking you, after this sort of wealth of experience in herbal medicine and sort of a whole ream of books on the way, what made you start by writing one about sleep in particular?
Well, I've been looking, I mean, I love writing, and I've done lots of writing for journals and all sorts of things. And I wanted to write a book, but I just didn't know what I was going to write the book about. You know, I think, well, it's all been done. You know, what else is left to write a book about? And then a young herbalist said to me one time, ask me if I could recommend a book on sleep. And I thought about it, and I couldn't. I was perfect. You know, it's something that I treat a lot. I mean, I think anyone who treats patients will treat sleep problems. And I felt that actually I'd got somewhere with a lot of people with sleep. So it was the perfect opportunity. You know, I was just really handed it on a plate. So I was delighted because I've just been looking. I had been looking for the right subject. Yeah.
So with all this, research and experience that you've put into this book, would you be able to start by sharing with us all sort of the research, what the science is saying about getting our sleep hygiene correct? How much time should we be asleep for? What time should we be going to bed? Can you start with the basics for us to get our sleep routine sorted?
I can, although I'm not going to start with science, because we're all people, and we're all different, and so there isn't one right answer for everybody. So that I would say that we've all got our own circadian rhythm, and the circadian rhythm is influenced by melatonin, which is controlled by daylight. So it depends on the time of year, it depends the kind of job we're doing, it depends on our life, our needs. We're all different. It's about finding what's right for all of us. One interesting thing I did find out, which I didn't know before I wrote the book, is that both Vitex agnus castus and mugwort, Artemisia vulgaris, are able to increase melatonin production. Now, that was a bit of science. There was 2 studies I found that can do that. And I just thought that was news to me. I didn't know about that. So this is something to play around with. So if you've got someone that is wanting melatonin to try to improve their sleep issues, then those are two herbs to actually think about, as long as those herbs suit the person, of course. Nothing. There is, I think the most important thing to say about sleep is that there is no one solution that works for everybody. Absolutely not. And often you will read books that tell you this is the answer to sleep problems. And it was probably the answer to the sleep problem of the person that wrote it. But it's absolutely, everybody has their own solution. And that's the tricky bit when you're a therapist, is finding the right solution for the right person. And the chances are they haven't found it for themselves because it's too hard. You need to be completely objective. You need to look at that person and look at their history, look at how they are, look at their constitution, and find the solution for them. So yes, there are some sleep hygiene rules. In the book, I go through them quite briefly because there are many, many books that tell you all about sleep hygiene. And what I find is that most people who have insomnia have done all of that. They know sleep hygiene backwards, and so you need to check these things, but they're not that helpful. So sleep hygiene, you need dark, you need silence, you need to be cool, you need to avoid screen, all of those things. What we do know is that sleep can be in two parts. So in the old days, many, many years ago, we used to have two parts to sleep. We used to have a dead sleep. They used to call it a dead sleep, a deep sleep, the first part. And then you've got the morning sleep, the light sleep. And many people who have sleep issues have experienced that, actually. And that light sleep can be separate from the deep sleep. So you can have your deep sleep for 5-6 hours, and then you can wake up, get up, do things, socialize, read, whatever. And then a couple of hours later, you can go back and have the rest. Or you could have that other part at a later on in the day. There's nothing wrong with having your sleep in two parts. You can have a 5-6 hour session, and then you could have a 2-3 hour session if you can manage that. And that's fine in the afternoon. It's actually fairly important not to sleep in the evening because of other chemical reactions going on. So it's harder then to go back to sleep again. But to have an afternoon sleep and a night sleep is fine if that makes up hopefully 7-8 hours. So we do need to aim at 7-8 hours, though. That's important for everybody. Now, again, the science does come in a little bit, because what science has shown is that a lack of sleep absolutely has a higher risk for Alzheimer's, for diabetes, heart disease, metabolic syndrome, anxiety, depression, obesity even, because when you don't sleep much, you get reduced levels of leptin, which are the appetite suppressant hormones, and you get increased levels of ghrelin, which is the one that makes you want to eat more. So the less you sleep, the more you want to eat. And it kind of makes sense, because you sleep less, you feel tired, you want to eat things that will give you instant energy, you want to drink coffee, you want to drink and eat the things that are really bad for you if you don't sleep well. And if that happens every day, that's the recipe for metabolic syndrome. So it makes all the difference in the world if you can fix sleep. That's really important. The other thing that I have also learned, particularly for myself actually, but I think it's true for a lot of people, is that those hours before midnight are worth more than the hours after midnight. There's an old saying that 1 hour before midnight is worth 2 after midnight. And I do think that's true, actually. it certainly works for me. You know, if I've had couple of hours before midnight, I have slept much better. So I can't stay up after midnight anyway. Not anymore. Used to do once upon a time.
So when we're doing sort of a couple of hours before before midnight, would you say people should be aiming to get to bed or sleep by 9 or 10, and then, you know, as you said, they can actually split up and get up really early? I don't know, do some...
It depends on your life and your lifestyle, you know. I mean, when you're young, you don't want to do that. For me, yes, it works beautifully. I like to be in bed and asleep by 10. It works. It gives me much better sleep. When I was young, it didn't matter. I could go to bed at midnight and still sleep 8 hours. It didn't matter. I think it really, you know, it depends on what you need as an individual and what works for you. But if sleep is a problem, then yes, I would say bring it early. You know, if you can get to bed by 10 and to be asleep around then, it's really useful if you have sleep problems.
And just on this, Kelly's just asked around, because I think you said the 2 sleep phases. You can do sort of, is it a deep sleep in the night and then a light sleep in the day, or could you do vice versa? Kelly's just asked.
I think we always sleep better in the dark. So if you've got a blackout room, then it probably would be okay if you did miss it, swap it around. But I've certainly had patients, I'm sure everybody's had patients who have got their sleep completely haywire, and they sleep through the day and awake all night, and they can't move it. And I don't think that's healthy. And same as night shift, you know, it's not healthy long term. So no, I don't think that should happen really. Yeah, you know, we're all individuals there.
Yeah, completely. And so I appreciate, you know, you've got the general guidelines on sleep hygiene. Obviously, as you said, most people be aware of these, avoiding the screens. What about in diet? Would you say that plays a big role in insomnia? Okay,
so to me, diet is the biggest. It's an enormously important factor in sleep hygiene. If someone has got sleep problems, then it's very likely that it's something to do with what they are eating and drinking. And it's not, you know, there will be a combination probably of both. So yes, it's got an enormous impact. I mean, I think I'm coloured by it. People who come to my clinic tend to have digestive problems. And so that may be why I'm finding that. But certainly in my experience, if you sort out what someone is eating, you are halfway to sorting out their sleep problems. So, for example, but it's not just what we're eating, it's how much and when. So I'm sure you've all come across the saying, eat like a prince at breakfast, eat like a king at breakfast, a prince at lunchtime, and a pauper in the evening. And certainly as we get older, our digestive ability gets weaker. And when you're young, yeah, you can eat a feast in the evening and still sleep, no problem. But as we get older, we can't do that. I think however healthy you are, as you get older, your digestive ability does decrease. You can improve it with bitters, of course you can. But a lot of people are better off either avoiding food in the evening or eating very lightly in the evening, and you know, replacing that with breakfast. So then you can do you can do intermittent fasting like that. You can skip your evening meal, having eaten lunchtime and morning. But if you're young and if you're working long hours, it's difficult and it may not be necessary. So I'm talking about people with problems sleeping and problems with digestion. So I'm not talking about absolutely everybody. What we eat and drink is also important. So obviously everybody knows about stimulants. So tea, coffee, green tea, chocolate, you know, mustn't forget the chocolate too. That is another horror. That is a strong stimulant, actually, chocolate. And You know, it's not to be forgotten. Digestion takes loads of energy. And when there's a lot of energy needed to digest a food because we're intolerant to it, we can't rest. You see it really clearly with children, with little ones, where it's they have a completely restless sleep. So I'm sure you've all had someone who, or come across a child who is really restless. Their bedclothes are all over the place. They have a sweaty head. You know, in the morning the bed looks like a bomb's been in it. You know, it's that bad. And often those children are hyperactive, or they have behavioural problems, or they can't focus, and they've had labels put on them. And nearly always, if you can find a food intolerance and change their diet, it sorts it out. I've actually got a nice little case study that I could tell you about a child like that. So I had a 1-year-old girl who was still breastfeeding, and she was brought to see me because her sleep was so poor. She was sleeping no more than an hour at a time through the day and the night. Imagine that. Must have been a nightmare. Mum knew she was dairy and gluten sensitive, and wondered if her daughter was also, as her sleep had worsened when she started solids. And of course, you know, anything that mum eats will go through to baby as well. So when I tested her, the baby was dairy, gluten, and salicylate sensitive. Yeah, so a bit more than mum. And so mum was dairy and gluten free, but mum now had to reduce her high salicylate foods as well. And of course, the baby, being new on solids, was eating lots of fruit, which is mostly high in salicylates. So all we had to do was change the diet, change mum's diet, baby's diet, done, sorted. You know, it was that simple. And it often is with children. It's find the food that they are intolerant to and sort it out. I should also say at this point how I test, because you know, there are many ways of testing, and I use kinesiology, muscle testing, and there's no scientific basis for it, but it works, it's cheap, it's easy, and it's accurate. I've used it now for, I don't know, nearly 20 years, I should think. And alongside medical history, dietary evidence, muscle testing, and then they take the food out of the diet, I reckon 99% accurate. And it's an awful lot cheaper, and I think much more accurate than expensive food testing. Wow. So that's what I use, and I love teaching it to people. So if anyone wants to learn, I'm always really happy to teach how to do it, because it's so simple. Anyone can do it. It just needs a bit of practice. That's all. So yeah, it's really important. So diet is paramount. I've got a lot of diet case studies. I mean, we can always come back to them if you want. So that was a really straightforward, simple one. But I have got a lot of diet case studies if we need a bit more. Yeah.
That's really helpful. Sorry, I got a bit of an echo there. And what was I saying? Oh yeah, and interesting about the chocolate one, because actually, you know, a lot of people might have a bit of dark chocolates, a little sweet after dinner, and that could actually be creating a whole lot of issues with their sleep.
Yeah, it's a strong stimulant.
So yeah, I guess if anyone else has any questions on the dietary side, we can come back to that. Yeah. What I also really wanted to cover, because I found it such a interesting section in the book, was around stress and anxiety, because I mean, all of us can relate to that impacting our sleep, I'm sure. And how would you approach sort of that side of dealing with sleep issues when people are just, you know, stressed, basically?
Yeah. Okay. So the first thing we need to know, is it chicken or egg? Are the sleep problems causing stress, or is the stress causing the sleep problems? Yeah. And that's taking a good history. You know, we need to know that, because unless you can work out underlying causes, you just can't fix sleep problems. So it's really important to have a go at working out underlying causes. So in the book, I have an example of someone who is sleeping badly and has to rush breakfast to get to work. So they have, I don't know, coffee with 2 spoonfuls of sugar in. They have a croissant with jam on, and it's grab it, eat it, run. Nothing healthy. All high GI, sugar, white flour. The whole works. Within 2 hours, they'll get a low blood sugar. When you get low blood sugar, you increase your need for cortisol. That increases the stress response. Yeah. Eventually, the body becomes less sensitive to cortisol and requires adrenaline to do the same thing. Yeah. It just doesn't respond anymore. So then you get the adrenaline coming in. And that is a downward spiral into stress, anxiety, and metabolic syndrome. Yeah. So that's sleep first. Yeah. And that leads to stress. So you need to work out what's going on. But it's, that is quite an issue. And of course, it's his chicken and egg. It's a vicious circle, isn't it? I like flower remedies a lot for any stressful situation. I mean, flower remedies are used tremendously for all sorts of problems, but for sleep and anxiety and stress, I think they're really useful. Because, again, I muscle test to see which ones are needed, because, I find it very difficult to work out otherwise. Dowsing also works, but, everybody has their own systems. When you muscle test a patient for flower remedies, you'll end up with, I don't know, anywhere between half a dozen and say 10 flower remedies. And then what I tend to do is give them the list of the remedies and say, go and look at this chart and read about them and learn about why you're stressed and anxious. Yeah. And every time, there may be one that they're not sure about, but every time how did you know that? How did you know that's what I needed? Yeah, every time. And that helps us to find out what's going on. That helps us to understand what's going on as well as treating it. So flower remedies, I think, are a really useful tool in many ways. The other reason they're good is that they start working within 24 hours. And so, you get fast results. So they're good. So flower remedies definitely part of my process for looking at stress and anxiety and sleep. May need to, obviously we looked at diet, and we may need to improve that. We may need to improve digestion with bitters. Adaptogens, so they've got to be suitable for the person. I think probably my favorite adaptogen two favorite adaptogens to sleep. One would be Ganoderma, reishi mushroom, and that's useful for pitta people, for hot constitutions. And then ashwagandha, withania, is very useful if someone is a bit cool. So both of those are lovely adaptogens that really help with sleep. So, I might well use one or the other of those. Sometimes on their own, sometimes I will just use, so I'll get them making ashwagandha milky drink at bedtime. That's a great one to do. That's the traditional way that in Ayurveda they would use it. Sometimes, if I'm using Ganoderma, then I would use the spores maybe, and get them to I had someone who, she used to do a teaspoon of the spores, mix it in with oat milk, and for her it was chocolate. It was hot chocolate. that worked for her. So it's finding ways to help things work. Nervines, of course, if they're in the right place at the right time, whatever is right for the person. Magnesium and B-vits. So I use magnesium, but I would say just about everybody who has sleep issues needs magnesium. Most people need magnesium, full stop, actually. And sometimes B vitamins as well. But magnesium, what I used to do was to buy a magnesium citrate powder by the kilo and put it in little tubs for people, and then they could take it and it made it a lot cheaper. And they could just take it by the teaspoonful or half teaspoonful at a time. But magnesium makes an enormous difference if someone can't sleep. And if there is stress and anxiety, we deplete magnesium and B-vit. So it makes it even more important when there's stress and anxiety. Do you want a case study?
Yeah,
a stress case study. My book has lots and lots of case studies in. I'm not sure how many, must be 20, 30 case studies in there, because I think it helps a lot to understand what's going on, and they're all different. So, oh yeah, I had a really nice one. It's this chap, 52-year-old man, was always tired, and he never slept well. He'd been on Zopiclone since he was 13, when he was sent to boarding school, and he was now 52. Can you believe that? He could not sleep without Zopiclone, and actually he was starting to find that he needed alcohol as well as Zopiclone to help him sleep. He'd had a very stressful life, quite high-powered, police, pilots, all sorts of things he was doing. But, and he'd moved overseas, he'd lived overseas, his life was very stressful and very unsettled. So, he was also an epileptic as well. So I had to be careful with the herbs. But what we found was that he was dairy intolerant. He was also eating loads of junk. So I cleaned up his diet enormously. And because he was such a strong man, he was iridology wise, he was a silk constitution. He was a strong constitution. And if someone with a strong constitution comes to ask you for help, they will do everything you tell them. They're a wonderful patient once they finally come to ask you. So I gave him a flower remedy. So we cleaned up the diet. I gave him a flower remedy. He had vervain in there, vervain flower essence, which is for people who try too hard. He had elm for people who don't want to let other people down. Hornbeam for lack of strength and inability to cope. Olive for mental and physical exhaustion. And that's actually all I did to start with, because I was nervous about the anti-epileptic medication he was on. So I was really didn't want to do much else. 3 weeks later, he felt a lot better. He wasn't tired. His sleep quality was improved, but he still needed the Zopiclone every day. So then I thought, okay, let's get brave. And I made him a tincture with Withania, Ganoderma, Centella, and Passiflora. And over the next 3 months, he stayed on that formula. He stopped his Zopiclone, and his sleep was great. So it was, that's what did it. He was absolutely fine. So it was, complete. To stop the Zopiclone after 40 years is impressive. I mean, he was strong. This chap was strong. But it was flower remedies plus diet work plus tincture. Did it for him. Yeah.
Gosh, that is a big testimony to do diet, flower essences and herbs to do that. And then Sam's just asked whether there's a particular time of day to take the magnesium. Do you get your clients to take it before bed?
Mostly, if it's specifically for sleep, and or restless legs as well, because that's always a sleep issue with magnesium deficiency. Then yes, I would tend to get them to take it before bed, and I tend to say 500 milligrams, but have a second one if you need it, or to bowel tolerance, because you have too much, then you just get the runs anyway, won't you? So yeah. And
I just had another question. Why did you add the Centella to this man's formula?
The Centella, because it was a good adaptogen for a fairly driven pitta hot individual. It's great for getting the brain calmed down, I think, but it's a tonic. It's very much an adaptogenic tonic, isn't it? So yeah, that's why the Centella. I can't always remember my
Yeah.
thinking, but and you change your mind, don't you? I mean, this was probably 10 years ago, and so
Yeah. And would you be giving this sort of remedy? Would this be before bed, or would it be 3 times a day?
That one would have been right through the day.
Yeah.
That would have been probably 3 times a day. And I can't remember what dose he had, but everybody is dosed individually anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, I might give some people drop doses, but he was probably a teaspoon 3 times a day,
Yeah.
I should imagine.
Great. Thank you. So I also wanted to understand around the hormonal side of sleep, because you mentioned in the introduction how sleep actually became an issue for you when you entered the menopause. I was wondering if you could share like your personal experience with insomnia.
Yes, of course. Well, until I went through menopause, which started kind of 15 years ago, I suppose, I'd had no problem sleeping at all. I go to bed, head tip the pillow, sleep 8 hours, no problem. I didn't know what sleep problems were. And then all of a sudden, I knew everything about sleep problems. I would have nights where I didn't sleep. I would have nights where I couldn't go to sleep, nights where I woke up at 1 and stayed awake till 3 or 4, nights when I had an hour on, hour off, hour on, hour off, you name it, I experienced it. And I think that's quite a good way to feel, so you know what your patient's going through when you've gone through it yourself. I always say that I think I just had about every menopausal symptom I could have, so I knew exactly what my patients were going through, actually. So yes, for me, I learned the hard way, because I don't think I knew very much about sleep until that point. Actually, I just accepted sleep. I didn't actually understand that it could be that much of a problem. So it was a very good learning experience for me. Painful, and still, if I eat the wrong thing now, it's always my sleep that's affected. So it is my weak point, or one of my weak points. I had to learn that actually the standard herbs didn't work for me, because if you don't address the underlying problem, the actual things that's causing it, none of the herbs will work. They just won't. They will not send you to sleep. Valerian won't send you to sleep if you don't address the actual underlying problem. And that's when I started to learn quite how much diet and stimulants would actually impact on sleep. So yeah, I've been my own experiment for sure. And I had to learn that we just can't get away with stuff if sleep is a problem. I think I was quite an extreme example, actually, but I have come across quite a few other people like me, mostly women, and mostly women going through menopause. It is definitely a time where everything goes upside down. Everything you thought your whole life you were fine with, suddenly it's not. But I've treated a fair number of youngsters with sleep problems. So, it's not just that. It's just that it is a very common issue in menopause, for sure. Yeah. So case study, obviously case history, case history is so important to find out if it is hormonal driven. When is it worse? Is it, if someone is premenopausal, is it worse premenstrually? Does it fit with their cycle? It's look at the medical history, see what else is going on, because we can have, it can happen. It can happen at any age. It really can. Is this menopausal? Is it premenstrual? Is it pregnancy driven? There's all sorts of possible reasons that it is hormonal. If you then decide that it is hormonal, then for me, the first thing to do is actually not to use particularly hormonal balancing herb. It's to treat the liver. That's where I would always start if there is hormonal imbalance. So liver detoxing, which I describe quite in detail in the book, and I would do the liver detoxing in stages. When I was originally taught, many years ago, I was taught to do a 5-day liver detox, and that was it. And what I have learned over the years is that that's too hard for a lot of people. So I now do stages of liver detoxing, and people go through stage by stage according to what they're able to do. I get a lot more compliance like that. So liver detoxing, right diet, again, take away anything that is upsetting the liver. I've got a case study in the book, or couple of case studies in the book of people that have gone through IVF with all the medication involved in that. That really messes up the liver. They need so much liver work for months and months to actually clear all that medication out. It's just such a nightmare. And often they used IVF anyway because they had liver problems, because their hormones were all skewiff. So yeah, of course, it's nice to know. With sleep, it's nice to know if someone is waking between 1 and 3, if that's their wakeful time, that also points you at needing liver work, because that's liver active time, and according to Chinese medicine. So that's always useful information as well. So if someone tells me about their sleep patterns, I'm always wanting to know exactly what time they wake. Is it regularly then? What times they get to sleep again? Because that liver time is really useful information. Oral contraceptive actually increases body temperature. So that's another issue to think about, because if we increase body temperature, sometimes we don't sleep, or we need to be cool. Apparently, the body needs to be about 18 degrees, not the body internal, but around the body needs to be around 18 degrees centigrade for comfortable sleep. So if the body temperature is raised, then we don't get that. So again, just being on the contraceptive pill can do that. Often when there are hormonal problems, we get depleted magnesium and B6, both of which are important for sleep. So again, that may need supplementing. Menopausal sweats, of course, is the classic one. And again, you ask, are you waking sweating, or are you waking then sweating? That's useful information too. You're waking sweating, then that is hormonal. If you are waking and then having a sweat, then that's adrenals. And you could be doing both, of course. So again, gives you clues as to how you're going to be treating it. So herbally, vervain and artium, I think, are my two favourite cooling liver herbs for hot sweats. So yeah, herbs herbally for sweats. Vervain, artium, hops, and trifolium, and I think those four really that treats most hormonally most hot sweat issues for sure. Do you want a menopausal case study?
Yeah,
how are you?
I'm taking notes as you're telling us this. So yeah, that'd be great.
Where's that one gone? Oh, here we are. Right, so menopausal case study. Oh yeah, this was an IVF woman. So she was 50 and she was having severe menopausal hot flashes. Found it easy to go to sleep, but then the hot flashes woke her up between 5 and 8 times a night. And then she had trouble going back to sleep. So she really didn't get much sleep. She'd had 3 failed rounds of IVF. And she had a history of severe fibrocystic breast disease, which you often see with liver congestion, lymphatic congestion, and the like. She drank alcohol nearly every night and had low energy levels. She was cold most of the time, except when she was having hot flushes. She had them during the day, but it didn't bother as much as the nighttime ones. So the first thing is to get rid of the tea and the coffee and the chocolate and the alcohol. Reduce those stimulants, reduce the heat forming foods and drinks, and of course it's the tea, coffee, and chocolate that are implicated in fibrocystic breast disease. And I got her on high dose evening primrose oil for that. Diet work paramount again. we got rid of the dairy, we got rid of all the bad foods, we got her on lots of vegetables, lemon, bitter foods, and so on. Herbally, I gave her herbs for liver and hormone imbalance. So she had arctium, verbena, trifolium, and asparagus racemosus, which is a cooling, nourishing tonic. And I got her on ginger tea as well. So ginger tea is a great one for recirculating, for evening out that imbalance between hot and cold. Actually, that was within 3 weeks. She was not having hot flushes anymore. She stayed on the herbs on and off for 3 months, but that's it. That was sorted. All she needed. So it was quite quick and easy. Actually, it wasn't difficult at all. But she had to do, she did some liver detoxing. She had to change her diet, so she had to do a fair amount. Yeah.
And so Tina's just asked, would you mind sharing your dosage on magnesium again?
Yeah, 500 milligrams generally at bedtime, and then a second 500 milligrams if needed. Dose dependent on bowel tolerance. So if you're all right with the gram, that's fine. If it causes the runs, then go back to 500 milligrams. Yeah, that's magnesium citrate nearly always. You can use glycinate, but I find citrate actually works for most people, and it's cheaper. Yeah.
And so I know a bit of a general question, but what are your favorite sort of allies for sleep that you've got in your Materia Medica?
That's a nice question, that actually, because it's quite nice to think about something like that. Magnesium actually is at the top, because if you look at everybody you treat, probably the only common denominator is magnesium. Almost everybody needs magnesium. So that's definitely right at the top. I know it's not Materia Medica, but it's right at the top. Nutmeg. Nutmeg is it's an odd herb. It's our strongest sedative. It's a bit of a blunt instrument, and I don't use it very often, but it's really good when you need to change someone's sleep habits. I learned about nutmeg many years ago from an American herbalist called K.P. Kelser. He was recommending using it up to 5-6 gram doses for chronic fatigue and fibromyalgia, when people are really, really tired, but they can't sleep. And he was recommending using that. And that's where I started working with it. And actually I wrote an article for the Herbalist some years ago and I did a big series of case studies, and my book's got, I think, quite a few case studies on magnesium. It is a very useful tool when nothing else works, when people have got in the habit of just not sleeping. People need anywhere between 1 capsule and 12 capsules. And it's always really important to start low, because everybody's different with the way they react to nutmeg. Toxic dose is about twice that, so you've got a good safety margin. It's quite safe, and rarely people need the 12. Taking 12 capsules isn't much fun anyway. Yeah. But rarely they would need that. So yes, nutmeg, withania, ashwagandha for the right person, but it's warming, so it's not right for everybody. Ganoderma would be kind of my opposite. Would be, that's the one I would also, if I didn't use withania, I would probably use Ganoderma. They are lovely. Piper, Kava. I know we can't use it, but it was so good. It was actually one of the few that worked for me. And that is a lovely soporific. And it just has to be used sensibly. Hops and tilia. So if I'm making a tea for someone, or beer, of course, but hops and tilia are both lovely sleep aids, making for tea, and flower remedies. So white chestnuts, chamomile, and dandelion for people who can't sleep. Dandelion flower remedy for people who can't relax. People who can't relax into sleep. Chamomile for people who can't bear chamomile tea. Chamomile flower essence is great because it does the same job. And it just have a couple of drops and you can't even taste the chamomile. So it's easier. And the last one, castor oil packs. So if someone's got a lot of liver congestion, a lot of liver stagnation, or if they've got pain, castor oil packs are really useful for sleep. Castor oil pack in the evening before bed can be really helpful for sleep, actually, for the right person. Yeah.
Oh, that's really good trove of tips there. I love that. Let me just, oh gosh, running out of time. I just wanted to understand how you differentiate, you mentioned this in your book, what sort of constitutional person would do well on valerian versus vervain?
Yeah, that's quite easy. The valerian suits the cool, pale, introverted, self-controlled, that kind of person. That's the right person for valerian. That really suits them completely. They can't relax. They say, "Okay, so I'm perfectly well relaxed," but they're not relaxed, and they're pale and they're introverted. They're sometimes tooth grinders too. So that's your valerian person. Vervain is the opposite. So they tend to be hot. They tend to be red-faced or flushed. They're sometimes angry. So they're much more extroverted. They're driven. They're intense. That's your, and again, they're the ones that will tell you they're relaxed and they're certainly not. So both of them will believe they're relaxed and they're definitely not. So they're quite distinct. Opposites almost. Yeah. Yeah.
Really helpful because it's always that valerian doesn't work for everyone.
No, it doesn't. Definitely not. Well, I was reading. Someone posted some stuff about using valerian flowers for people who can't take valerian root, and I only learnt that a short while ago, so I haven't really had a chance to try it out. So again, that might be something to try out for. Test out for anyone who can't take valerian root. Have a go with valerian flower tincture instead. Yeah.
A bit like the chamomile flower essence. Just monkeying around. And obviously, please, everyone, if you've got any more questions, but any tips for nocturia, getting up to pee?
Yeah, nocturia, peeing at night, having to get up and pee at night. It tends to be a more male thing, but men can do. It can be quite often. It can be really quite regular. I've treated men who've been getting up every couple of hours, but I've also had women with the same problem. With men, it tends to be more prostate related, usually benign prostatic enlargement. With women, it's more likely to be dietary. So both dairy and salicylate foods, if you're sensitive to them, will irritate the bladder. So that's usually where I start. And of course, with prostate enlargement, they always benefit from cutting out dairy anyway. So usually it's look at food intolerances. So is it dairy? Is it salicylate? And then look at prostate, and that usually sorts it out. I had a woman many years ago, actually. I must have seen her over 20 years ago, and she was a teacher, and she was having to go have a pee kind of every hour or two, right through the day, which is not great when you're a primary school teacher. You can't do that. And right through the night, just the same. I took her off dairy, gave her a tea with, I think, probably Elixir and Zea in, sorted within the week, and it had been so extreme for her. And that's all she had to do. She was so delighted. She was really, really pleased. And it was easy.
I just really love this sort of using the diet as well. Like, I think I need to learn kinesiology.
Everybody does. It's so useful. It was the best thing I ever added to my practice.
Amazing. And so Tina has just asked, what would you suggest if someone is allergic to valerian?
Allergic to valerian, but they would suit it otherwise.
I assume so.
Yeah. So if someone is allergic to valerian, I'd probably go with ashwagandha, with withania, because it's warming. Yeah, I think that's probably what I would use. Yeah.
And Emma's asked, which brand of flower essences do you use?
Well, I do use the bark essences, but I use an awful lot of other ones, and I make a lot myself as well. So I use orchid essences. That's a couple of my favourite are orchid essences from the International Flower Essence Repertory up in Scotland. But I also make them too. So chamomile and dandelion, particularly, I make myself. So yeah, and it's so nice to make them, isn't it? It's such a nice thing to do, and it's perfect weather to do it at the moment, actually. So yeah, all sorts.
Yeah, that's amazing. I don't know whether this question is probably outside of the scope of this talk, but Tracy has asked about prolapse uterus causing nocturia, if you have any insights, if you've dealt with that.
Well, I always remember my good friend Julie Britton-Seal telling me that she had treated someone with a prolapse using slant board and Capsella. Sure, it was Capsella. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was Capsella. But the point was the slant board. So that was the most important bit. So you set up a board so your feet are raised. So everything, so you use gravity basically to get the prolapse back in. And you set up the slant board like that, and you lay on it as often as you can. And apparently it does do the. Now that's not my experience. I've not done it. I've not treated anyone, I don't think, with prolapse. But you know, Julie was very definite about this. It works really well, apparently. So yeah.
Yeah. And just wanted to understand as well, because everyone's probably learnt so much already from this talk. What can people expect from your book?
Okay, so what it is it's all the books you find will be full of sleep hygiene and maybe one or two little tricks that people have learned. What my book does is go through each chapter bit by bit, looking at all the different possible underlying causes. So there's a chapter on diet and digestive problems. There's a chapter on hormonal imbalance. There's information on pain, sorting pain, coughing, headaches, restless legs, even periodic movement limb disorder. You know, and how to deal with them. Yeah, so it's not actually just a book on sleep. It is actually a book on how to deal with all these other problems too, which affect sleep. Yeah, it's actually not a big book. I think I write quite concisely. I'm not a person with too many who uses too many words anyway. So it's not a big book, but you'll find there's actually an awful lot of information in each chapter about each of those problems. So there's chapters each on each of those, and then there's a large materia medica covering all the herbs, the flower remedies, also essential oils. I've got a fairly big section on essential oils as well, which ones to use to help with sleep. So yeah, there's even though it's not very big, it's quite comprehensive. And my good friend Laura Starling, who I trained with all those many years ago, did the cartoons for me. There's cartoons in there that I think are absolutely marvelous. I'm so pleased with them.
It's a really great book, having read it myself. Yeah, it's so easy, but also giving you the information that you need as a practitioner, or sort of, you know, but as it is sort of really concisely written, at the same time it's really helpful for anyone just like wanting to learn more about how to deal with their sleep issues. So I've learned a lot from it, and also from this talk. does anyone have any other questions? And whilst we wait for those, I was wondering, Christine, if you could share how people can find out more, like how to reach you, and yeah, or buying the book.
Right. Well, as far as I know, well, unless you live close to me, when I've got some copies, but otherwise, your best bet is to go through Eon Books. So AEON Books, and they are the people who have the code SE20 to get 20% off. As far as I know, that's the only two ways of getting it at the moment. I mean, I suppose it'll come onto Amazon at some point, but it's only just been published. And I've got copies if anyone lives nearby, or Eon, direct from Eon. Yeah.
And I'll put the link in the chat again for that. And Joe's asked about whether you give details of the liver detox work in the book.
Yes. Yeah, it's very clearly printed. You know, it's all in the book. How to do it, exactly how to do a liver detox, and there's also details on things like the low salicylate diet, how to do a dairy-free diet, how to do a gluten-free diet. You know, so there's quite a lot of detail how to do things. Yeah.
And are you happy if we share the recording to people that have attended the course?
Yes, that's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. So just going back, yeah, Tina asked, yeah, we'll share a recording of this. And any other questions? Tina, I don't have a chance to. Someone's messaged me about a genuine book, but I probably won't have a chance to click on that link. So before we wrap up, does anyone have any final questions? Just got lots of people saying thank you. Katie, no, we won't be issuing a CPD certificate. I'm not sure what that. I'll have to check on that, but I didn't think we would. And yeah, okay. Well, I mean, I'm really. Oh, Barbara's just asked, how do you teach kinesiology?
How do you teach it? Well, I'm really happy if someone wants to organise a class, I will come and teach it. So that's the best thing to say, because I've got to the point now. I've stopped seeing patients. I am teaching, but I'm not organising groups. You know, I'm now retired enough to not want to do too much. But if someone wants to set up a group or organise a class, I'm really happy to come and teach how to do kinesiology. You know, we'll do it in half a day, but a day's better.
Yeah.
I don't treat with kinesiology. I am just using kinesiology for diagnostics. That's all. You know, it's not touch for health. It's not that. It is purely using kinesiology to ask the body questions. Yeah, but I'm very happy to teach that if anyone wants to organise a class. And I think my email address, if anyone wants to get in touch with me about that, my email address is c@christineherbert.co.uk.
I'll put that in the chat as well.
Yeah.
As I'm sure, I mean, I know I'm keen. So that's .co.uk.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. Well, yeah, everyone's just saying thank you very much. Really informative, great session. And so we're just about coming up to 8 o'clock. So thank you everyone for joining, and thank you so much, Christine. This has been fantastic. I've been, you know, making those as I've been asking the questions. It's really, really helpful, and some real absolute gems on there. Una has just asked if you teach kinesiology on Zoom. I assume not.
No,
yeah,
it doesn't work like that. You need it's got to be hands-on. Got to be hands-on. Yeah.
And you're based in Norfolk, so would you be doing it, or could we, I don't know, arrange something in London?
I travel. Yeah, I travel. Don't like London very much, but I would if I had to.
I did. You know, well, yeah, maybe we'll work out something as well for everyone that's interested. But thank you so much again for your time, Christine. It's just been such a pleasure, and thank you everyone else for joining. Oh, Tracy's from Australia, so she's Thank you again from Australia.
My cartoonist lives in Australia. I know there's books going over there, and it's also going to be published in the States as well. It's going to be published in the States for sure.
Yeah. Well, we need this information out there, because I know, you know, a lot of people are suffering from insomnia. So I will, for everyone, I will get a recording out of this talk, and yeah, I'll wrap up. Thank you everyone so much for joining, and thank you again, Christine. It's been great to have you on. Take care, everyone. Bye.
Bye.